Welcome back to the Aro Benaiah Show, where we spotlight the real stories behind the hard hat, tools bets, and business breakthrough. Today's guest is someone who speaks directly to the heart of what we do. Tracy Austin is a powerhouse in HR and leadership, especially for the trade business. She's the founder of Elevation Talent Consulting and has spent over 20 years helping construction and skilled trade businessmen and women build strong teams, keep it up talents, and grow leadership from the ground up. She's known for the cutting through the flip-flop of real strategy that work on the job sites, not just in theory. If you are struggling with hiring or leading your crew or building a culture that actually lasts, this episode is for you. Good to have you here once again, Tracy. Yeah,
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you for having me.
All right. Okay, I will just dive into the course of discussion. Listen, what was it like growing up?
Growing up, I grew up on the side of a mountain, and it was fantastic. Like, you want to talk about an incredible childhood on the side of a mountain. Um, I grew up really having an incredible support system around me with family and whatnot, and yet looking at those things, saying, when I reflect back on it, it is, what is it that we really want to create? And I think that that's something that's really important, is having the ability to dare to dream and
Hmm.
having that childhood allowed that to be able to create that for others.
Was there any moment, let's say from your family, that shape the kind of work you do now, that shape some kind of certain ethics compared to what you were doing when you were when you were a child?
Kind of, I think that there's definitely those defining moments that we have growing up, right? There's both the good
Yeah.
side of that and the bad side of that, right? And I don't think it's bad. I think that there's things that force us to become who we decide to be going forward. So, like, one example for me was, we traveled in my teen years and I was able to see a lot of the United States. And that's something that just instilled this curiosity inside of
Hmm.
me that's pulled all the way through. There's another scenario where I was held back in kindergarten and put into the next grade. It wasn't that I wasn't smart enough, it was more around the social interactions. And so that was something that it's looking at that and saying, how do we create connection, but also how do we also look at that and say, when is someone ready for something else? And when do we need to have conversations while ensuring we give them a voice?
And also, what was the nature of your first job, and at what age was it?
Yeah, so my first job was actually doing some administrative work for a like a roofing siding company. And so, that was the first job. And then I went in and I was a lifeguard for several years. And so, and then I waitressed for a while. And so that customer service, that how do we serve that other person, and yet knowing the customer isn't always right yet, how do we create an and both so that both needs can be met?
And also, have you worked as part of a team, let's say blue collar entrepreneurs before you venture into the leadership? More like with your hands, have
Um,
you worked on site before you now venture into the leadership aspect of administration?
I went to school for human resources, and all of those jobs that I had after that were in HR, but a lot of, like, my second job in HR was in a manufacturing environment, and it was a center for the developmentally disabled. So if you want exposure to compassion, to gratitude for individuals that truly see you for who you are, the heart center of that, versus all of the accolades that we want, such an incredible experience. So I spent a lot of time on the floor in that position, really getting to know the people and what made them tick.
Oh wow, it's make them tick. I think that is amazing. I guess that really speaks volume to the leadership you give today in your consulting company. And also, I would like to ask this too. as at this particular first job you had, was there a particular, I don't know, maybe the first, second, or third job that you really do that shape you for the leadership for the leadership or for the role you are actually taking today?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. So, I was at, like I said, the shelter workshop for the developmentally disabled, and then I moved into a role that was an HR manager role. So it was my very first HR manager role, and the organization had been around for more than 50 years.
Oh, wow.
My first task was to implement a drug screening program.
Wow.
So if we think about this, it's to implement a drug screening program. It's my first manager job. And it was like, okay, I'm going to go get this thing done, right? Task focused, task focused, task focused. Well, I walk into one of the centers one day, and there was about 20 different locations. And I walk into one of the locations one day, and all I hear is hatchet woman. Like, what? Who's hatchet woman? And the person at the front desk looks at me and she goes, you are. And I was like,
Wow.
huh? And then I hear from the very back again, hatchet woman. And I'm like, what? She looks at me and she goes, when was the last time you were here? And I was like, last week. And when were you here before that? Like the week before. And what did you do? And I'm like, I rolled out a drug screening program. I wrote somebody up. I terminated somebody. Got it. So this look at it and I go, okay, so I was checking all the box of the doing of things as that manager checklist. What I wasn't doing is I wasn't being a leader. I didn't collaborate with the manager and the directors. I didn't sit down and have the conversations to say, it is non-negotiable to roll out this program, but what are the impacts of it? What's the impact on you as the director? So the fear is I'm going to lose half my staff because they may or may not be smoking something. Fair. So, so going through that now, what's really important in leadership is that connection and that collaboration because there's multiple competing priorities. He cared tremendously about his people. And he wasn't against the drug screening program. He wanted to ensure that they had the time frame to not smoke if they chose to, because this kind of came out of nowhere. And when we didn't give people warning, and this was never a precedent before, you start to lose trust. And he also didn't want to lose some of his team members. And so what that lesson really taught me is the importance of collaboration and the importance of understanding what the multiple competing priorities are to come up with a win-win together.
Oh, wow. Wow. That is amazing. I think from what you just said is the fact that being a leader, especially in trade industry, is the fact that you understanding what the culture is, what goal you want to achieve, each and every of these particular facets of the company, so that you'll be able to kind of collaborate with those who you are employing and being able to meet at a junction where at the end of the day it's going to be a win-win for both those you are leading and you being the leader. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So what drew you to the world of HR and leadership, especially in the trade business? Focus on the trade business. So what's actually draw you to that particular aspect? Because I know that there are other parts of HR where you might not need to necessarily work with trade business and those other companies. So what drew you to that of trade business?
Yeah, I think I didn't go after HR. I think it kind of found me, and I think that sometimes happens, right? Is that things find you, and what I will say is there's so many facets of HR. Um, and I do think behavioral styles and knowing what your own behavioral style is and what the need of the job is incredibly important. When I first got into HR, I was doing payroll, I was doing benefits, I was doing all the compliance-based HR, and I hated it. Well, my behavioral profile does not match that analytical, detail-oriented. The more I was in it, where I thrived was the employee relations, was the training, was the coaching, and that's a completely different skill set. And so over time, we, I think, navigate towards those areas that we are best at that we don't realize is really easy to us because it is easy to us, right? And so, I started Elevated Talent 7.5 years ago. And within that transition, it was really saying, where do we create the biggest impact? Where do we see those light bulbs go off with folks? And it really is the training and the coaching piece, especially of growing young leaders. And if we look at the statistics right now, 0.4% is what the job market is growing in the United States. That's it, 0.4% is the increase that we have in people in the job market. So we need to focus on retaining our current staff. Well, with the AI happening the way it is, guess what AI is not going to replace? It's not going to replace a plumber coming into your home.
Yeah.
It's not going to replace an electrician. It's not going to, it will not replace these trades jobs. It will replace recruiters. It will replace some of the, attorneys, pilots, those kind of things, but it's not going to replace the hands-on jobs. Therefore, if you look at those two things together, it's incredibly important that we are training our folks how to lead, because very few folks actually get leadership training, and that authentic leadership training of how to connect with another to enroll them in what the goals of the organization are.
Wow, wow. Thank you for that, Tracy. And also, I think when you were sharing, you make reference of before you actually venture into that of the trade business, you make reference of a core skill, which was in coaching, in training. And yeah, I actually want to ask, what was the turning point that make you realize that I want to help leaders in construction and trade business to build better team? So at what period, or more like when you actually started out doing HR, did you started working with trade business, or while you were working with them, at one point it just dawned on you that it's going to be that of construction and trade business leaders I'm going to work with to better their team? At what point did you actually get to realize this and you start working on it?
Yeah. And again, I think this is one of those where you kind of fall into it and it finds you, right? Like I said, that very first job I had was in a trade business, at the nonprofit I worked for, which I mentioned, in that
Yeah.
story. That was a construction portion of that business. And so my entire career, I've been working either with manufacturing and or construction, which are very, very similar. And
Yeah.
so, what I love most about those organizations in those roles is so often folks are overlooked or not given a voice.
Yeah.
And within the training and coaching is it's giving folks a voice and giving that permission in a way that they can take the complaints that they have to actually make requests. So we believe every complaint is just a poorly worded request. Therefore, when we empower our people to make strong requests to solve their complaints, we're elevating their lifestyles and we're elevating our organizations.
Wow, this is profound. You just make reference of a very intriguing point because over here I do painting, and also I do painting and industrial cleaning. And over time, going to clients and relating with clients, sometimes I discover a huge gap between what the clients perceive of especially trade business, the way they overlook them and look down on them sometimes. So that was the reason why I even started this podcast, because I just feel like a whole lot of these are trade people who are in trade business. They are being overlooked owing to the nature of job they done, which sometimes affect the way they do their job and the creativity they put into it to actually do what they do. So, tell us tell us about the moments where you had more like a tough talk on job site with team on how to change the outcome. Yeah, you just make reference of a bit of it, but I just want to know, how did you actually engage that tough talk? Because you make reference of the fact that some of them has they were underlooked. they were not giving attention to you being able to kind of focus more on them and see what they're struggling with, and you be able to provide solutions to it that make them not put a whole lot of creativity into what they do.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you have like a complaint that you would love to talk through and we can kind of do a scenario?
Yes. Okay. Um, I'm just okay. Let me view myself as I'm part of the team now, and let's say this is more like a big company that I'm getting to work for. Okay. Let me just strictly say, is the company, let's say it is on plumbing and each and every other stuff. And let's say as one of their trade persons who get to work for them, my complaint might be the fact colleague that I'm working with, there are some there's no level of compatibility in terms of there's a bit of disconnection, being that I'm working with him though, but to have issue agreeing together, working together, or agreeing on some particular terms so that we can get kind of as a team execute the job a bit faster. Being that there's just level of disconnect between me and my other colleague, and owing to that is slowing the work, and I don't know how to air my view. I don't know how to talk to the company about it to resolve the issue between us, so that in a way we could work better. And also, if there's an issue between clients and that of the trade persons to let's say in the way they address the trade person in charge of the one handling that particular site. So how do you, through tough talk, being able to resolve this
Yeah,
without, yeah.
great. So what I heard the complaint was is my coworker and I don't get along and he's not doing work to the quality that I'd like him to do it.
Yeah.
Is that resonant?
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay. So, the first question that I have is, I want to focus on results, right? So the first thing we do is we start to understand what is the real problem. Is the problem communication? Is the problem we don't have the same definition of quality of work? Is the problem they're not showing up on time? Is the problem that they're not showing up prepared with the tools that are needed? Is the problem that they are not cleaning the things afterwards and thus it's putting more work on me? Right? So we're really taking the complaint and understanding what the true problem is. So I just listed off of a bunch,
Yeah.
but what I would do in that conversation with you is I'd say, okay, so tell me what are those things that come up that have you frustrated with that person?
Frustration will be the fact that we don't deliver timely on the job, and we don't deliver the better quality, and the fact that we have to do extra work at the end of the day after that particular trade person has gone, being that I have to do the cleaning up, and also why actually carrying out that job, other things was being spoilt owing to they were not actually careful on how they actually carry out the job.
Yeah. So I would take these questions one at a time, right? So the first one was, we're not getting the job done on time. So I'd say, okay, what's stopping this job from getting done on time?
He didn't show up on time, and he showed up unprepared, and he didn't show up with the whole of the two sets that is being needed on that particular site.
Okay. So we've got on time, prepared, and lack of tools.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what I'm going to do with that is say, okay, so let's reference this back to what the organizational expectations are, right? So is there an attendance policy? Is there, do we define what we expect out of employees when they show up? Like, don't show up hungover, show up with your steel-toed boots and your PPE, those kind of things, and show up with your tools. So this is, if I'm your supervisor, I'm asking these questions and I'm going back and I'm referencing what's needed, right? So now my question to you is, what is your request? request do you have of me, whether it's HR or whether it's your supervisor? What is your request of me? Because now we're clear on what the problem is, or at least
Yeah.
one part of the problem. So now what's your request?
Yeah, my request is going to be at the end of the day, the trades, the particular person who I make reference of the employees, is going to understand. You actually reiterate what the company policies stand for, understanding it, and apart from understanding it too, it saved their face of they are not being disgraced. They understood what it now, and now they learn from it, and they wouldn't have to kind of do that same particular thing again.
Right. So now what I'm going to say is, okay, I understand your request is, you know, to reestablish the agreements that we have,
Yeah,
right? So we're going to
yeah,
reestablish the agreements of how we show up on time, and we're going to reestablish what's needed. And we use something. There's a book out there called The Good Authority, which I absolutely love. It's a great read or listen. But there's something in The Good Authority called the accountability dial. And the accountability dial uses five things. It's the mention. Hey, Aro, it's 8:05. We were supposed to be here at 8. What's up? Right? We're mentioning it. And
yeah,
then the next is the invitation. Hey, you know what? It's been 3 days that you've shown up late. What's going on? Right? I'm noticing a pattern. So the mention is about, I care about you. The
yeah,
invitation is about awareness of the pattern. The next is the conversation. The conversation is about impacts. Hey, do you realize that every time you show up on time, it impacts this job? Which means we're not getting started on time, which means we're not meeting the expectations to the client. We're also creating more work for the rest of the team. It's the impacts. And it's also bringing up the impacts very specifically on them. You realize when you continue to show up on time, I know one of your goals is to move into a foreman role. That's absolutely not going to be possible if we don't have the attendance figured out.
yeah,
The next step then is the boundary. Hey, look, we've got this attendance policy that's a point system, and you're at X number of points. I need you to start showing up on time. Otherwise, there isn't necessarily going to be a position available for you. Then the limit is that performance plan, right?
yeah.
And so that accountability dial goes into that. And typically you do that with another person, but that's an example of how to have those tough talks that is in partnership with the person. You notice there wasn't any shame or blame. It really started with curiosity, and it focused on our agreements and the outcomes that we're looking to complete together.
Wow, wow. Thank you very much for that. It's the fact that you make reference of being in partnership with yeah, with them, and yeah, reiterating what the policy is all about, and what would be the best win-win for both team towards getting the job done and towards their retention. Yeah, also, what is the biggest mistake that you find in trade business, those who are in trade business today, and over time as you have worked with them, and how do you think leaders can actually fix them?
Yeah. I think the biggest mistakes that there's a couple, but one is promoting folks without giving them training on how to lead. Because
Mm,
not only could we lose and do we lose incredibly great doers, we also potentially lose folks that are now on their team that individual doesn't know how to lead. And so promoting folks without training is a number one mistake that I see made. And another mistake that I see made so often is we don't take the time to connect personally with our team. It's all about
okay.
do versus connecting with the person to really understand what makes them tick. Because when we have trust with our leaders, we're more likely to give more to them.
Mhm. Well, this is key. It's the fact that you make reference of you being able to kind of being that it's a trade business, it's a handy job. You don't just promote without having getting to see what they do over and over time before you promote, so that at the end of the day, it wouldn't be your expectation of them is not being met, and that creates a level of disconnection after promotion. Yeah, which is very, very, very key. All right. Why do you think employee retention is such a challenge in construction trade and trade business? Why do you think it's a big challenge?
Yeah. I think there's not enough folks in the trade businesses, right? So folks are bouncing from organization to organization for a quarter or a dollar or whatever it is an hour more, right?
Yeah.
So there's not enough, is number one. Number two is a lot of our trade organizations have not created great cultures, right? We've created cultures where we're allowing bad behavior. And folks are looking for environments where they don't necessarily have to put up with that bad behavior. And so, that alignment between what is an individual's personal values and the alignment into the organizational core values becomes incredibly important. And so, for organizations, it's owning what your culture is. And again, we define culture as the behaviors that you allow or don't allow inside of your organizations. So, for those trade leaders, if you're complaining about behaviors, folks not showing up on time, folks cutting corners, guess what? You as a leader are allowing those behaviors. And that's exactly why we have our leadership development program and our team retention program, is to support leaders in knowing how to connect, build trust, and create some accountability around behaviors that create a much stronger work environment.
Wow, wow. This is so key. I think it's the fact that you make reference of that even the trade people too who actually work, they're looking forward to an organization where they wouldn't have to put up with their bad behavior. So almost every trade persons are looking forward to a company and organizations that is more of the culture is more like better off, and the fact that they wouldn't have to put up with their bad behaviors. And yeah, this is very, very key. So if you were to give a blueprint to um a trade leaders who is just starting out, being that you run a consultant that get to train them over time, if you were to give a blueprint of what they should put in place in creating the culture that actually attracts those trade persons to their business, what would those blueprints be?
Yeah. So, if we look at, kind of what that tough talk blueprint is, there's really 6 steps that we have for that. And I do have a download that you can kind of connect with, that kind
Okay.
of walks through this with some really good examples.
Oh,
But
okay.
that first thing is to create that blueprint for the conversation. I think that's what you're asking for,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, yes.
Yeah, is to know why you want to have the conversation, right? Like, what is your purpose for having the conversation? Is it to blame or shame them that they did something wrong? First off, it's not going to go very well. Come up with a better
Yeah.
intention, right? So, is the purpose to bring awareness? Is the purpose to have them understand the impacts? Is the purpose behavioral change? Is the purpose the boundary? Or is the purpose the limit to where we're at? If we go back to that accountability dial that we talked about earlier. So, most times the purpose is partnership into achieving a shared goal.
Yeah.
And then step 2 is to set the tone for partnership. So if we go back to the conversation we were having earlier around the frustration, we're not getting the work done on time because folks aren't showing up and they're not showing up prepared. I may start that conversation to say, I'm really looking forward to, the conversation because I want to understand what is really driving you and what's important to you. I'm really looking to create some partnerships so we can reach the shared goal of completing these jobs on time. Is that a goal that you also want to meet?
Mm,
If we don't agree upon the goal up front, we're going to talk in circles. So we need to understand, what we want to change. So what's the purpose of the conversation? What is the goal we're aiming towards? And then we're going to set the tone for partnership within that. We're going to stick to the facts. We're not going to create this big story or you're lazy and you're a deadbeat dad and you're blah blah blah, because that stuff happens, right? And it never
Yeah.
goes well. Like no one ever receives, at least in my experience, these accusations of things that are very storied around the fact. We want to stick to the facts.
Yeah.
Our start time is 8 a.m. This is in your offer letter. This is on the schedule. Based on our timekeeping information, we show you're showing up. Here's the information: 8:05, 8:07, 8:25, 8:32. Therefore, we're seeing a pattern to this. Those are observable facts. There's no assumption or judgment there. Our goal here is that we can complete these jobs on time, and here's an area that we see is not. Is there anything going on that is stopping you from getting to work on time? You notice that is in partnership language.
Yeah. 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 Thank Yeah, thank you so much for that. It's the fact that you make reference of partnership again, which simply means, as trade leaders, you have to. I think before even starting the conversation, is the fact that you have to sit down and know what is your expectation from them at first. Yeah, everything that you actually get to once, so that you can actually create a blueprint that doesn't just span from the fact that you want to accuse and shame them or do any of those things that wouldn't be in a good time. But also, every of this particular question or around the conversation that strengthen the partnership, yeah, towards them understanding what is being demanded from both ends, so that at the end of the day they are going to deliver very well at their job. So,
Mhm.
from your years of working with trade leaders, what do you think is a culture killer that trade leaders often overlook? Let's say in a company that just started, what are those urgent stuff that trade leaders often overlook when they just create their industries and they have a whole lot of trade persons working with them?
Yeah, it's be your word. Do what you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to be somewhere, be there. If you say you're going to complete a job, be there. Guess what? Stuff comes up and you may not always be able to do all the things, then communicate it.
Mm,
Hey, guess what? We're not going to be able to be there at 8 today. However, I can be there at 9. Does that work for you? Again, it's in partnership. Do what you say you're going to do, over communicate what those things are, and be in partnership with the people, whether it's clients, whether it's employees. Be in partnership with the people that you're working with.
yeah, be in partnership. I think communication is very, very key. I think oftentimes doing a handy business, it's communication is often overlooked. But I think with this discussion, it just dawned on me that everything rise and fall on, yeah, being able to communicate effectively to those who are working with you, to your clients, and to the leaders, to having a clear definition that both end understand each other. That very way, the better results can be gotten, because with communication, I think every issues that we have discussed here today is it will be able to be easy to figure out compared to just leaving one side with a particular mindset without clarifying what is being demanded. So, how do you actually inspire a crew that's how do you actually being able to kind of inspire a crew that's to work harder without micromanaging them, and without micromanaging them to work harder, and yes, how do you actually inspire them
Yeah.
so that they will not get burned out at the cost of working?
Yeah. Figure out what they want. Ask them, what do you need for you to be successful?
Wow, wow, wow! This is it's the answer is very, very short but very deep. Yeah, what do they actually want? Because I just remember more like when I actually started out doing my kind of job. I remember I was working with some bosses then while I was doing painting, and I know those couple of days. There are some days where we have a lot of jobs that is going to linger close to, let's say, up to 12 hours, 14 hours in a particular day to get the job done. And I discovered that the only reasons I was able to kind of do the particular job to that extent that very day was, apart from the agreed, despite the agreed time was actually certain, but being that it was extra load of work over time, I just remember that it was the fact that my boss was able to reach out and ask, what did you actually want? How can they be able to inspire me? Let's say with some level of dividends, with some, yeah, it just strengthens the synergy between the trade leaders and that of the people they are working with too, so that at the end of the day, the both of them know what is being demanded from each of them, and then they could be able to kind of put in their effort. Because I discovered that if you know what they want and you reward them, they'll be willing to work more, and at the end of the day, they will not be burnt out, and still you wouldn't have to micromanage them.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for that. But how do you see AI changing leadership in trade? Should he fear it or should he prepare for it?
I think AI is a gift. And I think that if we have the mindset that it is a gift, it can do so much for us. So if you think about a job site and all of the things that are going on in a job site, whether it's scheduling, whether it is materials coming in, whether it's weather, there is a lot of multiple competing priorities. There's a lot of organizations in different trade organizations working on job sites. AI can really streamline so much of that in a really, really impactful way. Whether it's scheduling, whether it's supply chain, all of those items that can make us much, much more effective. Again, we cannot replace with AI our trades people, our folks that are laying the wire, our folks that are out there digging. Like that is not
Yeah.
going to be replaceable necessarily. But what we can use AI for is we can 100% use AI for many of those other areas to create much better safety on our job sites, to
Mm.
ensure that our folks are safer, that they're going home more at night, that, or as they came in, right? So there's a ton of different things that we can 100% do with AI that do benefit it. Is there a learning curve to AI? Oh yeah, 100%. And I think we're still figuring it out, but it will change the game for sure. And if we adopt it with the right tools, it can 100% serve us.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is very, very key. It's the fact that we are not seeing AI as a threat, but we are seeing it as more like a blessing that is coming around to help us to be more effective in what we do. And I think from what you just said, basically means, um, do you think? Okay, let me just add. Do you think AI can actually replace some certain trade business? And yeah, I'm just thinking loudly. Do you think AI can actually replace some of them? But I know it can actually enhance the effectiveness of some. But do you think it will actually?
Right. So I think that there's a couple things here. Like AI is information that is already out there. AI is, can pull and synthesize information together really, really fast. AI is not intuitive.
Yeah,
AI doesn't have feelings yet. It may, like I think sometimes it tries.
yeah,
But as humans, we have this intuitive piece. We can kind of see things. AI can definitely pull the data together so that we can synthesize things and ask great questions about it. I was talking with a recruiter earlier this afternoon, and what he was saying is, they're getting so many resumes and cover letters that are actually elevating what folks actually know and are doing. And so they're learning to suss out the human elements in there versus AI is just pulling this stuff that's not even tied to that person's background and resume, and they're looking for the human stories. They're looking for what makes that person, individual and special in what they're doing. And AI can't do that because it doesn't have feelings or intuition. And that's really what sets us apart.
wow, it doesn't have feelings or intuition. Which simply means for our trade people who are the audience listening to this, all you need to do is learn to work with AI and being better in what you do. AI can't take your job. Yeah, I think
I
this just add.
respect, think it's going to in many of these trade jobs. It's, and we still need that people element that leads
Yeah.
folks the way that they need to be led.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And also, if there is anyone, let's say a small business that working with two, three, who are struggling to lead a crew, what is one piece of advice that you can leave them with, being that they are just starting out and they don't have much?
Yeah. Get really curious about what your people need and get also very clear on what the expectations are.
Yeah, be very clear on what the expectation and know what they need. Well, thank you so much, Tracy. This actually means a whole lot. So, how can my audience learn from you and yeah, book your services and yes, learn more from you basically.
Absolutely. So we have that Tough Talk blueprint that I share that's a free download. We
Yeah,
also offer something called our People Strategy Club, which is there's no charge to it. It's a live Zoom call every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Central Time in the US. I don't know what time that is your time.
yeah.
But that is some offerings that we definitely have. And then we have our training programs that are all virtual. So if those are things you're interested in, you can find all of that on our website at elevatedtalentconsulting.com.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Wow. This is so amazing. It's the fact that it's free extra time, which simply means one at your end is going to be 6 hour difference. It's going to be seven. Yeah, it's going to be 7 p.m. over here, which we speak volume for our audience who would like to actually hook to the Zoom call. I think I'm going to put the link and everything attached to it. And also, okay, okay, thank you so much for the advice and the fact that they will have something to gain with the link that we're going to put out at the end of the show. And also, if you want to encourage any trade persons who is just working for himself, he doesn't have any crew yet. He's still looking forward to building a sustainable business, to have a crew also, and yeah, and to actually just he's still working, it's just a small business, and him alone is a person currently in the business. How do you think they could actually work better and towards scaling and towards having employees around? What are those certain things you think they should be looking forward to in creating their culture and yes, making better a better use of yeah, in let's say in foresight, the company they are looking towards to, how do you think they can put things in places towards scaling and towards putting on some particular platform?
Yeah. You know, again, it goes back to clarity, right? Clarity around what are the most important values to the organization that this person's living out themselves. But as you start to hire folks on, you need to define that for them. You're also defining that with your clients. And so, that's one. And, it goes back to that reputational piece of being your word, doing what you say you are going to do, because that will allow you to build your business as quickly as possible.
Wow, doing what you said you're going to do. Yeah, thank you so much, Tracy. And I think I have an outro for this particular episode, so I'll just read it before we go out. Yeah, what a wonderful conversation, Tracy. Didn't just give us insights, she gave us tools from tough talk on the job site to building real leadership that stick. Her word hit home. If today's episode spoke to you, go check out her podcast, the People Strategy Podcast, and visit her at television talentconsulting.com. Trust me, there are more. There are more where it came from. And hey, if you are a trade business or a foreman, painter, cleaner, and yes, foreman, business owner who need to hear this, do a favor, share this episode. Until the next time, keep building, keep leading, and keep showing up strong. This is the Aro Benaiah Show. Once again, good to have you here, Tracy.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.